Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. I am really excited to break down today's video because we're going to be analyzing three potentials that I think are most likely for Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is to break out and make a new all-time high, this is always what ends up happening right before the majority of our profit potential sets into our portfolios. The biggest ROI is made once Bitcoin first makes that breakout. And so for today's video, I'm going to be analyzing the Bitcoin price. We're going to be looking at every potential that I see fit for a cycle top, how big the cycle is going to be, and then a couple different scenarios for where we could actually see this cycle ending once the true cycle top is confirmed. I think that we have a lot of upside potential coming in very soon, and it's important that everybody is positioned and prepared to capitalize before this next move actually takes place, because my belief is that it's the most important one to be prepared for, and this is where the majority of our profit is actually going to be made. If you guys find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button, and without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Now, in my last update, what I talked extensively about was how our current consolidation looks identical to the same consolidation that we saw right before our new all-time high in the last cycle. Now, what I was talking about was how at the beginning of when we started this pattern, when Bitcoin topped at 14K, it looks pretty much the same as when we ended up peaking just recently here at about $72,000 to $74,000. When Bitcoin peaked at 14K, we made this short-term downtrending resistance. Very much the same thing that we did once we peaked at 74,000. We made two different false breakouts. That took place here, and it took place here, and it's the same thing that ended up playing out for Bitcoin just recently. Both of these false breakouts ultimately led us into an absolutely massive capitulation, and it ends up playing out in a similar way inside of each one of our cycles. In the last cycle, when Bitcoin had that massive capitulation into the COVID drop, what we ended up seeing was many altcoins being down 40, 50, 60+% in value. It provided us the final shakeout before that new all-time high actually took place. Bitcoin ended up going from like $3,000 all the way up to $60,000 in that one big move. And where I'm looking at today with our crypto prices is a very similar type of consolidation where we just saw a massive drop. Many altcoins got smashed. Many of them dropped 40, 50+% depending on which ones they were. And now right after that, we're seeing the market looking like it's ready to be reversing. As we're looking out at and zooming out at Bitcoin, Bitcoin in and of itself is sitting right around those prior all-time high levels. We've been consolidating at those levels for the last 6 months approximately. With us having such a consistent correlation to that COVID drop, I do think that the same rules are going to be playing once again, where what the main thing we're going to be looking at here is analyzing how this next move is going to be playing out. In the COVID drop, after we ended up bottoming, we rallied all the way up to this $12,500 level, but once we officially broke out of it and retested that as new support, that was where we got the big majority part of that impulse that came, where Bitcoin went from like $10,000 all the way to $42,000 in one big move. Looking at Bitcoin today, I think that the same rules apply, where once Bitcoin gets back above this $70,000 level, that's the moment where we're going to see many of these markets absolutely start to rocket. Once we can flip that level as new support, I think that that's where we're going to get that next breakout into a new all-time high, which is why for the rest of this video, I wanted to map out three scenarios that I see fit for Bitcoin, how prior cycles have played out, and understanding the time frames inside of each one of these. We're going to be looking at the Wall Street cheat sheet. We're going to be analyzing a little bit of the 4-year cycles because I want to make sure that you guys know exactly how to be positioned and prepared to capitalize on any of the momentum that is going to be having its way over this entire bull market. Now, right off the bat, guys, I see three scenarios for our crypto cycle. I see option 1, I see option 2, and I see option 3 right here. Option 3 is going to be our bearish scenario. Option 2 is the scenario where institutions maybe take a little bit more profit a little earlier than people expect. And option number 1 is going to be the true crypto super cycle blow off top. All of these are going to be profitable except for the bearish scenario. However, 1 is obviously going to be the most profitable scenario. This is our ideal setup. And then number 2 would be kind of just, an average sort of cycle, I guess you could say. Now, the big thing we need to understand here is how our cycles have played out about historically and the path that we're on today. Are we at a similar trajectory, or is this something completely different? And up to this point, it's been a little bit different, but not too much to be, worried about. Because we've spent like the last 4, 5, 6 months consolidating right here, we're right on path to those normal time frames. And what I mean by normal time frames, if you look at every one of our cycles, it follows the same events, where our bear markets last 1 year in duration. This one, our most recent one, was exactly 365 days. And we can also take a look even into our 2018 cycle bear market. It was exactly the same period of time, 362 days. So once again, our bear markets are about a year in duration, and the bull markets are 3 years in duration. So what we've historically seen are 3 years up, 1 year down. If we analyze from the bottom of that 2018 bear market being around $3,000 all the way to where we ended up making our cycle top at the end of 2021, it was 1,063 days, almost exactly 3 years. So we saw 3 years up, 1 year down, and that's been the staple of every single one of our bull markets up to this point. So we know, historically speaking, that if we've already finished the 1 year down, how long is 1,064 days into the future? Where is that going to be giving us our projected cycle top at? And if we're looking at 1,063 days, you're basically going to be looking at October of 2025. So that's going to be giving us a cycle top sometime at the end of 2025. That's where our projected cycle top is going to be. So if we're looking at a normal bull market, this is the most bullish scenario that I see fit for our crypto cycle. What I think is going to be playing out in this next move is once we finished this consolidation, we're going to be making a move all the way up to 100K. And really, my target is 90 to 100K. That's where I think we're going to be hitting in this next move. And to be following the most bullish type of setup, I think that what we need to be end up seeing for this crypto cycle moving forward from here are us to actually come back and retest some of these prior resistance levels as new support. And generally inside of a bull trend, what you're going to see is higher highs and higher lows. The corrections always come back to the bottom of this trend line. And then when you make a higher high, all of these are always coming back down to retest those prior highs and the ascending support before you just continue trending up in that move. This would be the most bullish scenario that we could have. Consistent higher highs and higher lows to an inevitable blow off top that takes place sometime at the end of 2025. This is what I want to see for the crypto cycles. This is the most bullish scenario that we would see for the crypto cycles. And I do think that the way that the market cycle has played up to this point, we have a very real potential of this actually being the case. What we would expect to see, considering we've been at this prior all-time high level for a long period of time. For us to make this big breakout all the way up to a $90,000 to $100,000 per Bitcoin, once we see that pullback, I'm not going to be surprised to see us come all the way back down to the $74,000 level. Maybe we even retest the prior all-time highs of that last cycle at around $69,500. I'm not going to be surprised to see that, because inside of a bull market, maintaining higher highs and higher lows, the corrections will generally come back down to those same resistance levels, hold them as support before reversing into a new all-time high. And this is something that I think our current consolidation is going to end up doing once we rally upwards of about 100K per coin. And then it's after that move that I think things are going to get very exciting, where we have true parabolic type of price action, where the dips are very small. They're getting bought up really quickly. The impulses are happening at a quicker pace before we have an inevitable blow off top leading into our cycle top being around $250,000 to $300,000 per Bitcoin. This is the most bullish scenario that I see playing out for Bitcoin. And this is the one that I think could actually be the case this cycle, considering we have governments that are buying Bitcoin. We have institutions that are buying Bitcoin, and BlackRock, Fidelity, 21 Shares, many of these other institutional corporations are on board with Bitcoin. And now we also have presidential candidates that are going to be pivoting to be pro-crypto, passing positive laws for Bitcoin. And I think that this could be the exact scenario that we end up playing out, leading into some type of super cycle blow off top. Now, there's other scenarios that we need to be taking a look at. For example, this scenario here would show Bitcoin actually making a much smaller type of move. Now, maybe this cycle ends up behaving a lot more similarly to that last cycle, where we see a lot of profit taking, we see a lot of over leveraged players and a lot of funny money in the market, a lot of debt that's really kind of manipulating the market back up. I'm not going to be surprised to see institutions actually look to hedge their bets, take some of their profit relatively early, considering the profit that the institutions are going to make even in this small move is going to be relatively large when you're talking about billions and billions of dollars worth of a position. So when we're looking at this, I'm not going to be surprised to see Bitcoin make a very big run all the way up here into like the early spring of 2025 before we get some type of midway correction. Now, this can go one of two ways. We can actually have this end up being an early cycle top where maybe we never even make another run all the way back up to that new all-time high like we did over here. You know, technically this was a new all-time high and we did have one final impulse, but this would be a scenario to watch for where maybe we get a lot of profit taking place from not only early Bitcoin investors, not only Grayscale and some of these other institutions that have been here for a little while, but then BlackRock, maybe some of these governments that have been invested for a while look to take profits as well. And if that's the case, we could end up seeing a lot more of a distribution type of top rather than your typical blow-off top leading into an absolutely massive new all-time high. It's still possible that we get this midway cool-off, and then this still leads us into a really big new all-time high before our true cycle top takes place. That's another scenario that we could be watching for. But the big thing I want you guys to be aware of is a lot of the hype is going to be taking place during this first move into this new all-time high. When Bitcoin's rallying upwards of $100,000 to $150,000, I think that there's going to be a lot of profit that's going to be made here inside of the altcoin markets, because there's going to be a lot of upside taking place when those actually start to start breaking out. The question I have is, once we kind of hit that peaking point inside of that early portion of the cycle, we've always, historically speaking, seen some type of correction. This case, in this scenario, it would be the same thing. We'd rally up to 100K, we'd get another 30 to a 40% pullback right here before making that next impulse. We might see something similar play out. The question is, if Bitcoin starts rocketing and makes a much bigger move, maybe instead of $100,000, we're talking us all the way up at $150,000 before we see any sort of real pullback, I'm not going to be surprised to see this type of scenario set in as we get this midway cool off before our true cycle top takes place. The issue with this scenario is we could end up seeing this be a distribution pattern that ends up following just like that last cycle ended up doing, where, yeah, we technically did get a new all-time high breakout right here, but it wasn't very much bigger than what the peak hype that we saw over here inside of the middle portion of that bull market. The peak hype for altcoins was more or less right in this period. That was where NFTs and DeFi as a whole were blowing up, and even though there was still some NFTs and DeFi blowing up in here, it was a lot smaller type of move than what we ended up seeing at our peak of 2021 in the early February to March of that move. So looking at this cycle, we could see something similar play out where we make this very quick impulse upwards of $150,000, and then we get a much bigger type of a pullback before we get that next higher high. The question is, does the higher high make a much bigger blow off top where we rally all the way up to that $250,000 level, where maybe it's a hybrid of the last cycle as well as 2017, where we not only get that big pullback, but we also get that big blow off top shortly after. You know, ignore the price targets right here. I'm just trying to help you guys visualize what is taking place and what could play out. I'm not going to be surprised to see something like this, where we make this big move all the way up to that 65K level, and then that's where we get that deep pullback, 40, 50+%, before we get an even bigger move into price discovery shortly after. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to go to a $600,000, $700,000 Bitcoin. I'm just trying to help you guys visualize what it could look like long term when we're comparing both of our last two cycles. Because our last cycle was more of a distribution top type of a pattern, and 2017 was much more of a blow off top type of a setup. So we could see a hybrid of the two. We could see one or the other. We don't know for certain. It's just important that we're understanding these factors, because it's not really going to change anything. If we're to see Bitcoin rally all the way up to $150,000 in this next move, I don't think it's a bad idea to lock up some profits, to hedge some of your bets. If you've been invested all the way since the beginning of here, even in our last cycle, some of you guys have been holding stuff, I don't think it's a bad idea to take profits off of that move, considering if we get that pullback, generally speaking, it could be the very real potential of this being a midway correction into our bull market before we end up getting another higher high. You could compound gains in that, or you could just take profit off the table, you know, put it into other investments, pay off debts, you know, whatever it is. I think it's a very important move that we want to take some profit, not getting too overly ahead of ourselves and trying to hold the entire length of the cycle, because even if we end up making another higher high from that point and we end up following a much bigger blow off top, you're not completely out of the market, but then you've actually hedged some of your bets to where you could compound on that dip before that blow off top takes place, or whether you've just made your profit and you're thankful for that and you've moved on with it. Keeping some portion of your portfolio still left to ride in case we do get something more of that 2017 type cycle could be a very smart decision long term. Now, there's another scenario that I see fit, and that is the potential where this entire move that we just went through is actually our cycle top, and we're about to be starting our drop right now. I've seen a lot of people in my comment section voicing their concerns of this, saying, man, this is already the left translated cycle. We're about to be starting this massive drop and bear market. This is the ending of the bull markets as we know it, because the institutions are invested. They're going to manipulate it and drop it into zero. I've seen a lot of arguments for that. A lot of people are seeming to be really fearful during this consolidation, saying that this is our true cycle top. I don't think that that's the case. And the reason why is because of all those things stated. We have institutional demand, we have government support, we have, presidents that are pivoting pro-crypto. There's a lot of variables that we just haven't had in our prior cycles, and that to me is more bullish than anything. I don't think that this is going to be a cycle where we just die out prematurely before we ever get started. I think that this is going to be a cycle where we follow either one or two. Either of these two options are more than valid. The one that I don't think is as much valid is this top idea that we're already at the cycle top before we start this massive drop. I just don't think that it really follows anything. It doesn't really follow the 4-year cycle. It doesn't really follow much up to this point. I think that it's much more likely that we're going to either get an extended blow off top upwards of about 250 to 300K per coin, or we're going to see something kind of more in the middle between 150 to 170 per coin. Maybe that's where we get our true cycle top. Either or, I think that we're going to be following a 4-year cycle. That's the most important takeaway from all of this. No matter if we're going to be looking to hold all the way up to like 100 or 250 to $300,000 Bitcoin and follow this scenario, all of these are going to be looking at a cycle top taking place sometime at the end of 2025. That is where our true cycle top is going to be for the crypto markets, basically right where this red line is. That's where we're going to be looking at our cycle top taking place, whether it's a smaller cycle top that's only 150 to 170,000 per coin, or whether it's a big grandiose blow off top at a $200 to $300,000 per Bitcoin. I don't know for certain, but I do lean towards us actually having that topping point being at the end of 2025, considering that's going to be giving us that 3-year bull marker point from our cycles, looking at 1,064 days up approximately. That's historically been every single one of our topping points for our last cycles. And so if that's going to be the case, we're looking at the end of 2025 being our cycle top sometime between September to basically the end of that year, December, January. That's where I'm looking at the best profit taking point for this cycle and where we should be looking to maximize the majority of our portfolio. I don't think it's a bad idea to hedge some of your profit once Bitcoin gets upwards of 150,000 per coin, especially if you're somebody that wants to compound gains inside of any dip, because historically speaking, we've always seen kind of these midway corrections that have taken place. And I'm not saying that it has to be exactly like our last cycle where we dropped 60% before making a new all-time high. But if we do get any of those opportunities, they will happen in altcoins. Altcoins that go up 10, 20, 30x in a quick move, they're also going to be doing, 60, 70, 80% pullbacks in their short-term corrections. So a lot of those will end up going into a new all-time high. So we're better off hedging some of our profit, looking to compound some of those gains, and then also keeping a portion of our portfolio that we're just going to sit on, because once that real upside sets in, we don't want to be waiting around trying to second guess ourselves and trying to second guess the trend of the 4-year cycles, because this has historically been the most consistent thing that we have in the market. So guys, if you find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. If you want to see anything on buying, selling, trading over this bull market, you guys can sign up for my Discord server. Link below. You're going to find my website. From there, you can get total access to my private Discord server. I post all my trades, anything that we're going to be buying, selling, and investing in over the cycle, where we take profits, and then most importantly, where we're diversifying our crypto profits outside of the crypto markets. I have a multiple step plan for how I'm going to be looking to compound gains over the next 5 to 10 years in the markets. And if you guys want to be able to follow along with how I'm doing that, you guys got to join the Discord server, follow my website linked below in the description. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, peace out.